Everything Everywhere All at Once is about accepting that life is better with googly eyes. Evelyn is overwhelmed, overworked, and overlooked. Anything to please anyone. Anything to please her father. Anything becomes nothing, and Evelyn is reduced to nothing but a bunch of titles. Mother, wife, daughter, immigrant.
I thought you were going to bring your daughter to help you translate.
Evelyn hopes that work, and more work will feed that deep dark abyss in which she keeps her trauma locked away, never to be let out, lest the beast that it is might ascend from the depths of her subconsciousness and turn to ash the very thread that weaves the weak tapestry of her world. Were the tapestry of overwork large enough, the pretty picture perfectly distracts from the worn-out hands of the weaver. If everything is stress, stress is everything, and everything is nothing. Evelyn's delicate balance of distraction and the dread is pushed out of order as the daughter, Joy, discovers one thing she cannot suppress. She's gay. Evelyn's daughter took the key to the realm of the abyss, the void, the nothing. She opened the gates and threw away the key to let out the beast, the dragon, the elephant in the room. She's living and breathing the smoke of this vile being as it scorches the threads of the tapestry of trauma. Our only hope is Waymond, Evelyn's husband, waving away at the smoke as he picks up the pieces of the weaver's loose threads. And as you watch this far into the video, you might get a feel that this isn't just a recap of a film. It's a recap of how the film made me feel, and I want to share that feeling with you. If you only watch the first 15 minutes of the movie, you might think that you're watching a comedic drama about family trauma. This isn't wrong, but when Evelyn is called for the yearly tax audit, the movie takes a sharp turn. A turn into sci-fi. At the tax audit, the body of Evelyn's husband is taken over by a different version of him. The Alpha universe has discovered interversal travel, and with it, the force of darkness that this Evelyn is the only person who can help them destroy. Jobu Tubaki has been searching universe after universe, executing every Evelyn she could find. She wants everything and will stop at nothing to bring chaos across the multiverse. It's not only her ability to travel between universes, the snap of her finger. She's invested in a statement piece of cosmic proportions.
She's been building something. We don't exactly know what it is. We don't know what it's for, but we can all feel it. You've been feeling it too, haven't you?
As the movie progresses, we learn that Jobu is Joy and Joy is Jobu. And Jobu has been taking all meaning, everything that matters, and placed it on a wonderful mix of existentialist comedy in the shape of a literal everything bagel.
What is it? I got bored one day, so I put everything on a bagel. Everything. All my hopes and dreams, my old report cards, every breed of dog, every last personal ad on Craigslist, sesame, poppy seed, salt. And it collapsed in on itself. You see, when you really put everything on a bagel, it becomes this. The truth. What's the truth? Nothing matters. No, Joy, you don't believe that. Feels nice, doesn't it? Nothing matters, and all of the pain and guilt that you have from making nothing of your life, it all goes away. Sucked into
a bagel. When I was 13, I read Nothing by Janne, a novella about Pierre, about 14 years old, who decides one day that nothing matters. If nothing matters, school doesn't matter, so why go? He skips school and crawls up in a plum tree where he resides for most of the story. So you might have guessed from the structure of this video, what turn does this story take? Well, trigger warnings for gore, animal cruelty, sexual violence, and death. Just like in my other videos, you can use the timestamps in the description. If you're on PC, you can sort of find them on the red bar here. If you're on mobile, you can find them in the description. Or alternatively, you can skip to this timestamp if I remember to edit it in. That's a reminder. Remember to edit it in. I forget it every time. Can this be the time that I remember? Please, Editing Atlas, I beg you. I'm having a crash out. Pierre's classmates grow obsessed with showing him that everything is not nothing. Something does matter, they assume in confidence. They enter a pact. They start a chain. They take turns. The person who gives an item of meaning chooses the next person and what they must give away to the pile. Just a sidebar in case there's someone who is watching this who might have actually read the English translation of this. I have learned since I wrote this entire section that in the English translation, it's technically translated to heap and not pile of meaning.
Had to go on that heap of meaning or they wouldn't have found anything.
But I think personally for this video, it's gonna make more sense if I say pile, because heap is, at least among the youth, which I'm still somewhat of a part of, although I am closer to 30 than I am to 20, I think it makes more sense that I thought of it as a pile, and since this video is about my impression of the movie, I'm just going to keep it as pile, but I want to acknowledge that the official translation is heap. Just know that I'm calling it the pile of meaning, and I know that that's not the right translation. The person who gives an item of meaning chooses the next person and what they must give to the pile. It begins with an innocent intent, a prized collection of books, a pair of expensive sandals, a bike that was begged for. Then it escalates. A Muslim prayer rug, the cross of Jesus in the church which the Father preaches, the hamster in a cage, the coffin and the body of your deceased brother. The eyes who cannot see blood must see blood. The dog for whom you are its only friend, its death on your hands. The virginity you were saving, taken by your peers. The finger of the hand that is used to play the guitar to impress, freshly sliced off. As the pile is finished, the students are found out by the local police. The book is in its final stage. A prominent museum offers to buy the pile. Replacing the coffin with a fake, the crime scene turns into an art piece. On the day before the pile is to be brought to the museum, the students meet up one last time. Sophie, who gave away her virginity for the pile, is the first among the pack to break. She yells the emotional impetus that the book has prepared us for.
Nothing matters. Nothing, 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 nothing. Spring, summer, autumn, winter, happiness, grief, love, hate, birth, life. It was all the same. Everything. Something. Nothing.
As the others in the pack start to fall like domino pieces, the pile of emotions overflow, the students start to violently attack each other. This is what finally gets Pierre down from his prized plum tree to take a peek at the pile of meaning. When he is faced with his fellow students, he flounders. He cannot allow himself to be impressed, so he scolds them instead. He turns around to leave, but as he does, the students beat him unconscious. At that same night, the old shed where they stored the pile burns to the ground, taking Pierre with it. The book ends at the funeral. Agnes, who's been the narrator of the book, ends off with her rebuke for the dead nihilist.
It's been 8 years since then. I still have the matchbox with the ashes from the sawmill and the pile of meaning. Once in a while, I take it out and I gaze at it. And when I carefully open the worn-down cardboard box and peek into the grey ashes, I get this unusual feeling in my stomach. And even though I can't explain what it is, I know that something has meaning. And I know that the meaning is not something to poke fun at. Is it, Pierre?
I think the death of Pierre is to be seen as a metaphorical death. Pierre represents that inner nihilistic urge to question everything and thereby conclude that nothing makes any sense. When he does that indelicately, he ends up spitting in the face of anyone and everyone who has ever put their blood, sweat, and tears into something. If you have a hard time getting past the nothing matters conclusion, you're going to have a really hard time getting past puberty and advance into adulthood. The students must kill their inner Pierre, or at least curb him. The students end up killing not just Pierre, but their inner Pierre, although you could argue that Agnes is really the mature one because she keeps a matchbox of his ashes on her for the rest of her life, to remind her that questioning the meaning of life is something you should do, but you should do so delicately without pissing everyone off. Like, you should have a matchbox of Pierre, but you shouldn't have a full-on Pierre, if that makes sense. After I wrote this, I found out that this isn't just me who thinks this. Here's an actually recent clip of the author talking about this exact thing.
Pierre Anson, you have to imagine this 14-year-old boy who climbs the tree. To my mind, he's not a nihilist because he's not depressed or something. He just thinks, really, there's no point to all the things that we run around doing, because the Earth is 4.6 billion years old and we live maximum 100. So the other children have to try to prove to Pierre Anton, but it's actually more so to themselves that there is a meaning. Because if they didn't doubt, that he might be right, even just with a little part of themselves, then he could just sit up there in his tree and shout and they wouldn't care. It's because they think, okay, maybe he is right, that it's a problem. And, when somebody has sacrificed something that hurts, why shouldn't their friends sacrifice something that hurts? Maybe it hurts a little more, but, well, who can tell what sacrifice is the worst? So it's once you go down that road, it's just really difficult to stop it again. The thing that surprised myself actually writing it was the children do find something, and where they find meaning is when they are at this funeral, which you can't formulate quite, but of course what they find is what we all know at funerals, is a very strong sense of being alive because we are confronted with death. They meet that feeling, because of course they have lost their innocence somehow, because in this fanatical project of finding the meaning of life, they have gone as far as to death. So they have killed what they're looking for the meaning for. And that complexity, they find the meaning somewhere, but I don't think they can enjoy it. So often also, people are provoked by this thing, the children, they are never punished for their horrible actions. But I think they are. They have the worst punishment of all, which is they have to live the rest of their lives knowing what they did. But as a reader or as a writer, luckily we can live through the story and find what they are finding, but we haven't committed the horrible acts.
The process of puberty creates this ideal environment for nihilistic revelations. Up until this point, you've experienced life through the lens of childhood innocence. But as you're slowly introduced to snippets of how adults do things, you're naturally pushed to conclude that nothing makes any sense. I am by no means an expert in any of this, like biology or evolutionary biology, but to me, on a philosophical level and cultural level, it feels like puberty is this biologically engineered cultural catalyst, a control group for the very construction of society. Joy and Pierre find themselves in this juxtaposition between childlike wonder and the looming coldness of adulthood. But it's not just about puberty, isn't it? We must venture further into the void. When I was 14, I read Stranger. The novel travels the mind of the French Algerian Maurice as he navigates the passing of his mother, the tragic destinies that surround him, and the consequences of never standing up for himself. The funeral of his mother is the focal point of the beginning and the end of his fate in the story. At the funeral, he struggles to express his grief externally in a manner that is socially acceptable to the friends of his late mother. Arriving home, he proceeds to romance Mary, a former co-worker of his.
Well, fancy meeting you here.
Mary.
I haven't seen you in ages. Are you in mourning?
For my mother.
When did she die?
Yesterday.
He has no aspirations that would be expected of other men in his position. As his boss attempts to offer him a prestigious one in Paris, he tells him this.
But it's impossible to change one's life. I might as well remain where I am. As a student, I was very ambitious. But then I had to drop out of my school. And I finally came to realize how unimportant that is. So I'm sorry. It's just that... Excuse me.
Morris is presented as a calm and collected character on the outside, but the reader knows that inside he has dissonance bubbling with energy. The bubble bursts when he and Mary are invited by their friends Mason and his wife to a delightful double date at their beach house, along with their friend Raymond. I'm aware that their names are Masson, Merceau, and Marie, but I've decided to anglify their names because switching between français et anglais a cette rapidité pour regarder pour ma esprit, mes cordes vocales et ma capacité de travailler à la langue française, je préfère faire la vidéo toujours, one language. Yes! Don't think about how many takes that took. As they finish eating dinner, Mary and Mrs. Mason eagerly do the dishes together as they send out the boys for a walk.
And when you return, you'll find us curled up asleep like little dolls.
And they were roommates.
As the boys wander the beach, enjoying the waves of the water and the sun, they stumble upon a pair of Arabian men, which they were trying to avoid with this maneuver of traveling away from the city for a while. Raymond is the primary target on which they seek to enact their revenge, as he used to be in a relationship with the sister of one of these men. Trigger warnings for domestic abuse and violence. When they were together, Raymond physically abused her, along with love bombing and controlling behavior.
Like I said, there's this dame I know, an old mistress of mine.
That man I told you I beat up, he was the dame's brother.
I was paying her rent. And added to that $15 a week for food, a couple of presents now and then. I mean, look, that's plenty for any woman. But Madame said I was stingy. Said she couldn't make out with what I gave her. Then another time, I found a ticket from a pawn shop, proving that she'd hocked 2 bracelets. You follow me?
Who the hell gave her those bracelets? I didn't give her any. It was somebody else.
So I kicked her out, after beating her up.
As the society in which the Arabians navigate is constructed in favor of the white colonizer Raymond over the Arabian ex-girlfriend, the men of the family choose to secure that Raymond experience repercussions for his violent behavior. As they clash, Raymond is stabbed, but is followed home to safety by Mason. But Morris, as the rays of the sun expedite his expectations to protect Raymond, he decides to return to the Arabs and finishes the job with a gun. Morris is arrested for manslaughter.
I was caught robbing a store. What did you do? I killed an Arab.
The court case encloses the cycle, the funeral, once again the focal point. His apparent psychopathy, proven by his apparent lack of empathy for his mother's death, his case is no longer about him, as he is transformed into a symptom of evil in the society that he resides, a symptom that must be treated. He is sentenced to death. On the way to his public execution, he finds himself in a state of bliss. He has accepted that his death doesn't matter. Death is nothing, so nothing matters.
And gazing up at the night sky for the very first time, I opened my heart to the sweet indifference of the universe. And I felt that it was so much like myself, almost like a brother, that I realized that I had been happy, and that I was happy still.
Do you ever think about dying? Do you ever lay in bed and stare at the wall, exhausted? Coming home from a long shift, making barely enough to survive, barely enough energy to order some food and lie down with your phone. Contemplating what all this hard work is for when we're all gonna die anyways. Do you ever think about people who mattered to you, who passed? Why did they have to die? Do they have regrets? Do you ever feel like crying to no end, thinking about all the people in the world who are suffering? Do you ever feel powerless? Do you ever wish you didn't know? Climate change, inequality, generational trauma, abuse, civil wars, queerphobia, systemic racism, fascism, genocides. Do you ever feel deeply empty and unimportant? Are you, like me, trying to think about everything everywhere all at once, and that fills you with this dread?
The crux of the issue lies in the Venn diagram of Joy, Pierre, and Morris. They all have experiences that conflict with how their surroundings expect them to understand the meaning of life. Evelyn expects Joy to follow in her footsteps, undermine herself and her queerness to fit into the mold of the world around her.
You... Why she thinks she is gay?
I'm so sorry. You're still hung up on the fact that I like girls in this world.
But she has experienced the joy of accepting her attraction to women and living outside the closet. If the template given to her doesn't matter, nothing matters. Pierre's surroundings expect Pierre to follow the template of neoliberal life. School, graduate, job, wife, kids, die. An important detail in the book is that Pierre's parents are hippies who live in a collective. You're only sitting up there because your dad is stuck in 1968, Big Hans yelled and threw a rock that flew in and smashed a plum so that the flesh and muck flew in every direction. We all cheered. Even I, even though I knew that neither were true. Pierre's dad and the collective cultivated ecological vegetables and exotic religions. They were welcoming of spirits, alternative treatment, and other people. But that's not why it wasn't true. It wasn't true because Pierre's dad was buzz-cutted and worked in an IT company. And that was very modern and had nothing to do with either 1968 or Pierre. Pierre has experienced through his parents that the nuclear family isn't the only path. The template given to him doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Society expects Morris to be consumed by grief upon his mother's death. The complicated relationship he and his mother had while she was alive is completely disregarded in favor of the expectations put on him as a child of a deceased. They harbored a weak emotional bond while she was alive, so why would that change after her death? What happened in his childhood we can attempt to derive from this particular scene I find emblematic of his relationship to his mother.
I hope I won't hear a dog barking tonight. I know that I'll think it's mine.
Good night. I don't know why, but I suddenly thought of Mama.
The courtroom questions why he wouldn't visit his mother that often when she was sent to a nursing home, but as he has been taking distance from her, he's felt at peace. He's been content with the disconnect. If the template given to him doesn't matter, nothing matters. If you feel like nothing matters, this might be the cause. The more dissonance between expectations and experiences, the more you might start to feel this dread. The dread has a name. It's called cognitive dissonance. If your cognitive dissonance is not being handled, the dread can start to take a very big toll on your mental health. I know because it did to me. As I work in other videos, this one lurks like a demon on my shoulder. With my life experiences and my interest in history, I've dealt with that dread for as long as I can remember. Forgive me if I'm shaky or my speech is a little slurred. This is where it gets personal. I was told by my mom, when you have a wife and kids, you'll understand. When I didn't want kids, nor did I want a marriage. I was told by my dad, seeing you in a dress would be my greatest nightmare. When that was exactly what I wanted to wear. Sorry, forgive me if I get a little shaky. This is where it gets personal. I was told by my mom, when you have a wife and kids, you'll understand. When I didn't want kids, nor did I want a marriage. I was told by my dad, seeing you in a dress would be my greatest nightmare. Well, that was exactly what I wanted to wear at the time. And in fact, when he said that, I was hiding 2 skirts in the back corner of my closet. I was told by a classmate, you're fat, while being possibly one of the skinniest people in the class. Now that I'm filming this, today specifically, it kind of hits different. Yesterday, I was literally at one of my first appointments at an eating disorder clinic. Forgive me if I'm shaky or my speech is a little slurred. Enjoy Pierre and Maurice. I recognize the dread, the cognitive dissonance. Forgive me if I'm shaky or my speech is a little... I too have times in life where nothing feels real, and it may seem, in that moment, that nothing matters. Forgive me if I'm shaky or my speech is a little slurred. Forgive me if I'm shaky or my speech is a little... And up until a certain point in my life, I would have agreed with the train of thought here. I agree that the world is absurd. Yes. I agree that the world is absurd, yes. But I don't agree that because nothing matters to you, that means nothing matters to me. Forgive me if I'm shaky. Your cognitive dissonance is your problem to solve, not mine. And my cognitive dissonance is my problem to solve, not yours. In the end, Evelyn attempts to kill Jobu, but dies trying, proving that trying to kill your inner nihilist, you end up killing you. Forgive me if I'm shaky or my speech is a little slurred. This is where it gets tough.
Tacitus, De Vita et Moribus Iuli Agricolae, 98 AD, Chapter 32. Rome was in an unprecedented state of fear and panic. People acted guardedly and avoided meeting and talking to each other, no matter whether they were friends or strangers. Could they expect any day of the year to be free of punishments when the manacle and the noose were conspicuous on the very day that by custom was meant to be free even of ill-omened words? Tiberius, they said, must have stirred up this indignation purposely, as part of a plan to make it clear that the incoming consuls was able to open prisons as they were the shrines and altars. Do you imagine that the Romans' bravery in war matches their dissoluteness in time of peace? No, it is our quarrels and disunion that have given them fame. The reputation of the Roman army is built upon the faults of its enemies. Terror and intimidation are poor bonds of attachment. Once break them, and where fear ends, hatred will begin. The enemy have no wives to fire their courage, no parents ready to taunt them if they run away. Most of them either have no fatherland they can remember, or belong to one other than Rome. Which will you choose? To follow your leader into battle? Or to submit to taxation, labor in the mines, and all the other tribulations of slavery? Whether you ought to endure these forever or take quick vengeance, this field must decide.
Hold on, let me take this. Hello?
You're avoiding the topic.
Yeah, I know. I was working on a video about trauma and video games, but the video length will grow out of my abilities at hand. The video length is long enough as is.
You're avoiding the topic.
What do you mean?
You're talking a lot of big game about handling cognitive dissonance. Can you really say that you had dealt with yours when you wrote the first part of the video? Listen, we both know there's something behind the words you were saying. You just don't want to go there. You're afraid of being honest. You're afraid that she is right about you.
No, not her. Never her. She's already whispering in my ears in those dark hours of the night. I don't want her to seep into any other crevice of my life.
Go on.
All right, then. It's about death, isn't it?
Go on.
Just give me a moment to change into something that's a bit more appropriate, okay? Before I turned 18 years old, I went to a total of 8 funerals of people who mattered to me to some degree or another. You know, people I either held dear or had good interactions with. I could tell you the stories, but it'll just boil down to there was a lot of old people in my family.
What about the youngest one?
I was afraid you'd bring that one up.
Well,
the one that haunts me. In Denmark, our version of a high school is when you're typically 16 to 19 years old. After graduation, you drive around in a party truck, visiting the families of your classmates. I remember the whole ordeal taking from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m., a period of time that's supposed to bring up good memories.
but it didn't for you?
Yeah, I mean...
I know what you're going to say. You're going to talk about cognitive dissonance because this is the time when you were expected to have fun, but you experienced your parents threatening to throw you out of their home because a friend called you Atlas in front of them at the birthday party. And while it's absolutely tragic that your biological mother would throw a tantrum, all because your friend saw your little brother and told her he looks like a mini Atlas, that's not where this video should be heading. That won't satiate the void, and you know that.
You're right. After graduating, the first time I reunited with my classmates was a funeral. And that's why nothing matters. I can't go back to normal from that. I expect death, but not from someone so young. My classmate was 19 when he passed. His passing moved death a lot closer to my age. If I could die tomorrow, why do I live today? It haunts me because logically I must have found an answer. It's 8 years ago and I still do things.
Exactly. Why do you do things?
Gaming.
What?
Yeah, gaming. Gaming is what has been keeping me sane. It makes me get that literal connection with like people and life.
That's not what I was looking...
Screw that. This is my video. I can do what I want. Why am I even listening to... Oh my god, why am I even listening to you? I don't need to... This is my video. I can do what I want. I can just like... Hey, Editing Atlas, can you...
What are you doing? You know she won't like this. Please.
So something happened while I was recording this next section, and all of the audio files got corrupted, but I didn't find out until 3 days later. And since I don't want to redo all that makeup, repaint my nails, and set up everything again and have to re-record 2 hours of footage, you're simply going to get this dubbed. I hope it's not too distracting. Anyways, moving along. If you have watched Everything Everywhere All at Once, you might have already caught what I'm doing. I lied. After Evelyn's death, the fake credits roll. I'll be honest, the first time I watched it, it caught me off guard. Evelyn dies, yes, but that's only half the movie. The fake credits cut to the universe where she became an actress, as we realize this is an end, but it's not the end. Everything has ended, but not everywhere. And so begins part 2 of the movie. Evelyn travels across the multiverse in pursuit of resurrecting herself, as it dawns on her that there is only one Waymond to end this. As she symbolically puts an end to him, she grabs a bat to smash the laundromat and finally admits, breaking the cycle of trauma, the never-ending washing cycle, is a first step, but not the last. When the washing cycle of trauma is replaced with a spinning bagel, the cycle has just been given a new coat of paint. While the washing cycle represents cleanliness and upholding an image of adult responsibility, the bagel represents devouring and sustenance. Laundry is an inevitable system. The bagel is a truth only the right minds can devour without dying of soul food poisoning. The googly eyes are also a cycle, but a more sustainable metaphor for the cycle of life, in my opinion. When you shake a googly eye, the iris might fall in any position within the pupil. And it's a choice. Why do we shake a googly eye? Because it's funny. It activates brain chemistry in our puny meat vessels, just because it can. If you want to break the cycle of trauma, you have to stop viewing it as a cycle altogether. There is a choice, somewhere. Life is not an endless cycle where history repeats itself in a worldwide Ouroboros. Life is a googly eye. It gets shaken on purpose, sometimes for no purpose. Repeating trauma and repeating history is a choice, not a chore. So what does this mean for the meaningless? You see, I can't fully explain the impact of this movie without exploring why it resonated with me. Back in autumn of 2023, when I started rewriting this video, I actually didn't know a proper answer to this question. I do now. My life is liminal. When I was 24, I read Image and Pilgrimage in Christian Culture. The anthropologists Edith and Victor Turner introduce a framework to understand the 2 different types of pilgrimage that are common in Christian culture. The internet has made famous the concept of a liminal space. In this case, we must think of the metaphorical space that a pilgrim is in. As a pilgrim in medieval Europe, you occupied a position that was outside legal and societal norms. You were legally and socially liminal, with special protections, but belonging to nowhere and no one but yourself and God until you were home and safe. Ideally, the pilgrim was going to venture out, experience religious fulfillment, and return a healed child of God, ready to fit back into society, better equipped to fulfill expectations of the ones around them. This is a liminoid pilgrimage, the one that is expected of you. But another type appeared. Some pilgrims ventured out, experienced religious fulfillment, and did return as healed children of God, but unable to fit back into society. Something had fundamentally changed. This is a liminal pilgrimage, the one that breaks your worldview. When I was 24 and I was reading this, everything clicked into place. Joy at being an emo teenager and kissing girls is not a liminoid phase that she'll grow out of. She chooses to stay out of the closet, to be open about her queerness. She can't go back to how things were. Her life is liminal. Evelyn thinks that her rebelling against her dad and choosing a man he doesn't approve of can only be experienced as something liminoid. Inevitably, she must return to fill out the social role of her dad. Her life is liminoid. Agnes is expected to forget about Pierre and move on, but she can't. She keeps the matchbox with the ashes of him. She's forever changed by Pierre. Her life is liminal. Pierre's dad rebelled, sure, by living in a collective and growing his own vegetables. Yet, as he grows older, he returns to normality. Buzzcut, IT job, kids. His life is liminoid. Morris is expected to grieve his mother, regardless of inner feelings and their actual relationship when she was alive. He's expected to forgive, forget, and conform to the ideal of son and mother. But he can't. He was content without her. His life is liminal. Forgive me if I'm a little shaky. This is where it gets personal. You see, this is how my own mother viewed her youth. My mom grew up with divorced parents, with a dad who had the same emotional availability, a brick, and her mother was impulsive and emotionally unavailable due to her own trauma. Both my grandparents on my mother's side came from working-class Swedish immigrants in the ghettos of Copenhagen. They both worked themselves up the ladder thanks to education being free, and both of them ended up marrying rich after the divorce. My mother grew up in the middle class, with the expectation that she should pick the fruits of the social mobility my grandparents had worked so hard for. So she rebelled. By all accounts, my mother was pretty cool before she had kids. She rocked a buzz cut, played video games with my dad, and went to metal concerts with her friends. But this was all liminoid. As soon as I was born, she began a transformation I experienced throughout my life as the firstborn child. She went from a metalhead rebel who questioned authority to a suit-wearing businesswoman who abused her kids and tried to make us all conform to bougie cultural expectations. In this self-therapy masked as academic analysis, you can see that because she saw her youth rebelling as liminoid, she reverted back to the cycle of abuse, back to normality. She was able to because she's straight. Her mental health is externally high-functioning, and she had the means to fall back to the template she grew up with. But she wasn't really allowed to rebel as much as it would seem on the surface. I know from interacting with my grandfather that he did not approve of her rebelling at all, and only when she came back to conformity, they came back on speaking terms. My mother found a way to get her dad's approval, just like Evelyn, but at the expense of her children. When I came out as gay when I was 13, she didn't approve, and we couldn't talk about it until I was 17, and I forced the conversation, because I knew that at some point I was going to come home with a boyfriend. My youth was liminal. I choose not to go back to normality. My theory, which I reached through therapy of many kinds, is that she saw me choosing to be outside society, and she envied me. It collided with her worldview, this view of, I suffered to return to normality, and that suffering is central to my identity.
Because if they didn't doubt, that he might be right, even just with a little part of themselves, then he could just sit up there in his tree and shout and they wouldn't care. It's because they think, okay, maybe he is right, that it's a problem. And, when somebody has sacrificed something that hurts, why shouldn't their friends sacrifice something that hurts? Maybe it hurts a little more, but, well, who can tell what sacrifice is the worst? It's once you go down that road, it's just really difficult to stop it again.
This worldview cannot survive if you don't convince yourself that there are no other options. But I saw that there was. I was happier when I was holding a guy's hand. And I didn't really want to do a heteronormative version of gayness where me and my partner conformed to masculinity. I had grown up with metal music. I wanted long dyed hair. I wanted piercings. I couldn't go back to normality. I chose to remain outside while my parents stayed within. the more I remained outside, the more I realized I wasn't alone, thanks to the internet, gaming, and the queer community. In the video game Stardew Valley, you play both a farming, dating, and community simulator. You've taken over the farm of your weird magical grandpa and have to build it back up from scratch. At some point in the game, you meet Pam. Pam is not friendly at first, but I was hooked. I felt like there was something deeper to this character that my friends at the time thought was just being a grumpy old boomer. So I stalked her on the Stardew wiki and started giving her beer. She started giving me batteries, and eventually as you progress in the community center, you can give her back her old job as a bus driver. You find out she's grumpy because she's living in a trailer with her daughter and she's deeply ashamed of it. Further into the friendship, you can buy her a house and she's over the moon. You haven't fixed her though. She substitutes her alcoholism for religion and keeps relapsing into the previous addiction. On second thought, maybe I shouldn't have given her all those beers. The game is all cute pixel art farm game sim, until you pursue the bachelor Shane and get to the heart event where you have to save him from taking his own life. Showing him that someone loves him motivates him to seek therapy and ditch his addiction to beer. In Stardew Valley, at first, it seems that you're looking to get the town back to normal. But as you get further into the game, while there's some things that do get back to how they were before, there's a major thing that wasn't there before. You build them something new. Your arrival is liminal, not liminoid. They can't go back to how things were before you came, because that's what led the town into decay the first time around. People have often asked, do video games cause violence? But I think that's the wrong question to ask. What you should really ask is, what can video games do? One of the video games I've played the most is Minecraft. In the way I've played it, it has created community. I was the admin of a queer Minecraft server between 2020 and 2025. A lot of the regulars in the community were people who were unable to or have a hard time going to queer bars or queer events, if they even have any in their area. To some, the server was their queer community. There's something about building that can really bring people to believe in themselves, to know that they're not alone and they have this one queer anchor in their life. This is part of why Everything Everywhere All at Once matters so much to me. The movie has me reminiscing on the messages that I've gotten from people throughout the years. I like to read you some of them and let them speak for themselves. I love this server so much. I feel so much more accepted than I did before finding it. I feel loved and I love playing with all of you. My dysphoria has actually got a bit better after joining this server. No other server in community actually makes me smile. I've been on this server for around maybe a week or two, and boy, it feels great to play on a survival server and have no one griefing your stuff, saying bad words and other stupid things we saw on other servers. Also love the fact to find an LGBT server. It's really helpful sometimes when you finally find a community you can join without being rejected or things like that. Okay, I'm just gonna be a little sappy. I've been in the server for like almost 2 years now, and it's been amazing. I always felt like the server was there for me. I've made some really amazing friends here, and I don't know what I'd be doing with my life at this moment if I didn't have the server. The server is such a motivator to just keep going, and proof that I can make it out there, and that I know I'll always have some really amazing people support me entirely. Thank you, server, for existing. And that's why I prefer Everything Everywhere All at Once to the predecessors of existentialist media. The Stranger and Nothing, they don't get far enough for me. They get very close, but then they cower before the finish line. If you're looking for the conclusion, I don't know, there is none. I mean, I can summarize what I've talked about. When it comes to the meaning of life, you have to seek it out yourself. It's not going to dump into your arms like fresh laundry out of a washing machine. When Sartre said, hell is other people, heaven is each other, this is what I think of. To me, the purpose of human life is each other. The meaning of life is that there is no objective meaning of life, but you're not the only one. There is someone, somewhere. The meaning of life is community, and it's a choice.
Avvicinare la carta al lettore contact. Avvicinare la carta al lettore contact. Validazione in corso. Restare in attesa. Arrivederci. Arrivederci. Arrivederci.
There is no historical precedent for this triumph. In the past, capitalism, whether in Mesopotamia in the 6th century BC, the Roman Empire, Italian city-states in the Middle Ages, or the Low Countries in the early modern era, had to coexist with other ways of organizing production. These alternatives included hunting and gathering, small-scale farming by free peasants, serfdom, and slavery. The setup of liberal capitalism has the consequence of at once deepening inequality and screening that inequality behind the veil of merit. More plausibly than their predecessors in the Gilded Age, the wealthiest today can claim that their standing derives from the virtue of their work, obscuring the advantages they have gained from a system and from social trends that make economic mobility harder and harder. As the elites in liberal meritocratic capitalist systems become more cordoned off, the rest of society grows resentful. Malaise in the West about globalization is largely caused by the gap between the small number of elites and the masses, who have seen very little benefit from globalization, and accurately or not, regard global trade and immigration as the cause of their ills. This situation eerily resembles what used to be called the disarticulation of third world societies in the 1970s, such as was seen in Brazil, Nigeria, and Turkey. As their bourgeoisies were plugged into the global economic system, most of the hinterland was left behind. The disease that was supposed to affect only developing countries seems to have hit the global north.
Another example of territory. Well, you should be grateful that I did this. Insert news here to you. And it's like, but I don't feel grateful, I feel hurt. And I get, I get that we have a concept of this. It can get really, really tough sometimes to stay in this kind of hamster wheel of ignoring your mortality, or it feels like ignoring your mortality, and just completely ignoring this kind of question that I would assume on the mind of every person at some point. It's like, well, what happens after you die? Everything's meaningless. And to some degree, yeah, it kind of is.
You're right. Nothing matters. But if I let myself succumb to that conclusion, every person who has ever abused me has won. And I am a very competitive person. At some point, I have to stop being a Joy, or an Evelyn, and stop being a Wayland. Not in spite, being depressed or scared. No. On the contrary, especially when I'm scared, and I feel like nothing matters, especially when the world is crumbling around me and I feel like giving up. That's when I need it the most.
Hello, Atlas.
Where am I?
We are in my realm, child. We are in the void. You might wonder.
Why am I here?
Exactly.
How did you know I was going to say that?
It's predictable, as are you. I brought you here to talk.
Talk? About what?
The dread, the truth, why you think nothing matters.
What do you mean? The video has an end, yes?
An end, yes, not the end.
How do I get to the end? What am I missing?
You played the game for 6 years, you know how.
The dragon? What is that supposed to mean?
Child, you are falling into the same traps you fall to others for. Think.
The dragon. The dragon. I need to find the... Trigger warning for CSA. Trigger warning for CSA. When I was a kid, I was sexually abused by my mother. She would help me in the shower to make sure I was cleaning myself right, all the way up to around 11 or 12 years old. I have blocked out 99% of these memories. I only know it happened because when my uncle was taking care of us one weekend, I remember asking him, "Aren't you going to watch me shower?" It wasn't until I watched Jeanette McCurdy get interviewed on a podcast about her book, detailing the abuse that her mother did in the shower. It was then that cracks started showing in my perception of my own life. I used to say, my mother was mentally abusive, but not as much physical, because she never hit me or anything. But then one day, it hit me. When cuddling with one of my ex-boyfriends and showing them Ptolemaea by Ethel Cain, everything clicked. I was in fetal position in the living room, rocking back and forth as the doors of a vault I never thought I had flung open. One realization after the other proceeded in the following months. Whatever my parents did in the shower was sexual abuse. When my dad would lay himself on top of us if we couldn't sleep and wait for us to do so, that was physical abuse. When I was 14, lying about my age on a gay dating website, doing sexual things for men over webcam, that was sexual abuse. When I came out to my ex-girlfriend as asexual, and she broke down crying at the idea of not having sex with me, threatening to break up with me, that was sexual abuse. For a long time I had been wondering, why does it hurt so deeply? Not just when the topic of abuse comes up, but every time I experience a situation where women are framed as inherently being a passive victim and men as inherently being an active perpetrator. It makes me feel like that same cognitive dissonance, because I am a man who was sexually abused by a woman. I'm being told something that doesn't match with my lived reality. Reading Noah Sassani's essay on hating men and becoming one anyway, it got me in the direction of unlocking what's going on here. Learning that my experiences of harm were because of patriarchy allowed me to see myself as a victim and stop blaming myself for violence done to me. But it also meant that my conceptualization of my own reality and my right to label these experiences as violence was inextricably tied to seeing myself as a woman. Tumblr user Sasquatch, when speaking on their abuse experienced in conversion therapy, says, marking me as someone who had been would emasculate me. When I was speaking to one of my ex-boyfriends about this, who is trans, he said, "Being abused makes me feel dysphoric." I feel I cannot continue this recording without mentioning that this particular ex chose to repeat the cycle of abuse and turned around to become an abuser himself. Since I entered the queer community, I have been naturally gravitating towards transmasculine people who have experienced abuse, sometimes at the hands of cis women. When I would finally get close friends who were trans femme, lo and behold, years into the friendship, it turned out that they too were abused by women. Why do I gravitate towards these people? And why have I felt so spellbound on the trans men I've been friends with? I think because we both struggle with the cognition of being abused doesn't make me a woman, in a world filled with people who would have you think otherwise. I used to think I was a binary trans woman. I thought that me having non-binary thoughts was simply me being afraid that I'd turn into my mother if I medically transitioned. But after having experiences with people who understand and who know about my abuse and respect my boundaries, I have felt so much more secure in what I have known for years. Being abused doesn't make me any gender. It just makes me a survivor of abuse. Every time that I'm being told that women cannot assault or men cannot be victims, it is like salt to the wound of my trauma and my dysphoria. Equating abused with women makes me feel gender dysphoric. It makes me feel like nothing makes any sense. It makes me feel the dread. It makes me feel like nothing matters. The psychiatric repercussions of my childhood will fade, but they are permanent. I am permanently mentally disabled because of it. I will never go back to normal. My life is liminal, and I prefer it that way. You're right. Nothing matters. But if I let myself succumb to that conclusion, my mother has won, and I'm a very competitive person. At some point, I have no choice to stop being a Joy and start being a Waymond. Not in spite of being depressed or scared, no. Especially when I'm scared and I feel like nothing matters. Especially when the world is crumbling. That is when I need it the most. Humans are flock animals. Humans thrive in community. Experience is supposed to change you. It's not a journey you venture out on and return to normality. You build a new world. You change. And that's okay. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
There's value in acceptance, but I always prefer to say in understanding, because acceptance, I think we are sometimes forced to accept situations that we shouldn't accept, but if you can't fight them, what do you do? But if we gain an understanding and insight that we can find a good way to live with something, then it's a different thing. And in this story, I have that sense that the children are left with an emptiness inside, like a sense of horror, because they somehow...
So, what now? I have been honest, I have acknowledged, and I have given the darkness its due. But then what? What you're watching right now is the third and final version of a video I have attempted to make since 2021. In 2021, there was a little boy who wrote a video essay about breaking up with his partner. A little boy who then proceeded to live 4 more years with said partner. That little boy grew up to become a man obsessed with proving to his neglectors and his abusers that there's a world outside these fantastical delusions. But let's be honest here. I wanted to prove to myself that something mattered, that there is a world outside, and there is. I did find it. This isn't just a video essay. This is a documentation of the past 5 years of my life and the works that have moved me to come to my central thesis. In writing part 1, I dealt with that first seed of realizing that something is wrong, but I was unmedicated and haunted by the implications of the realization that nothing mattered in my life. Writing part 2 sprouted through the winding paths of intellectualization as I got on ADHD meds, and all of a sudden I felt I could do everything. Like Evelyn, I could escape into universes of possibilities to run from the nihilism in my home and in my heart. But as Morris pulls the trigger, as Pierre faces the pile of meaning, and as Evelyn gets lost in too many universes, my feet grew tired of running, aching for me to stop. In the middle of writing part 3, I was so used to running for my life, for most of my life, that I forgot anything else than running was possible. And then I realized that this project did not start in 2021. In 2018, I did a performance as my final project in arts class, titled Self-Image. I had made a list of words that I had been called in my life up to that point. A friend then helped me paint those words across my body, and I put on a blindfold with the name of the work written on it. In preparation for this, I had memorized the list of words. During lunch, I stepped out. My mother was filming from a balcony. It started as a whisper. Insecure, hysterical, ugly, cheap. Insecure, hysterical, ugly, cheap. Then, over the course of the 30-minute lunch break, my voice grew louder and louder until I was almost yelling out the words from my body. Unnatural, weak, lonely, depressed. What I didn't realize at the time was that I did exactly what the point of this video is. Quote, "When I started this project, I didn't know if I'd have the courage to do it. I thought, this is crazy. Some people probably thought, what is he doing? But it means something to me. All those 26 words are things I've been called myself. And I repeated the words, just like I do every day. Fat, lonely, weak, and so on. In that way, words stick. So I thought, why not do it? As the camera ran out of battery, only the students and teachers present that day experienced me yelling out, "This is my self-image, a blindfold blinding me from reality." I was lucky to halt my running right before this epilogue were to become an epitaph. I looked around and I realized that I need not run away anymore, as I had run into a new world, catching me as I collapsed from 27 years of running. I wanted to prove in this video essay that something matters. The meaningful proof I found in the making of this video essay. My central thesis has grown and evolved, and after 8 years, I have come to realize that it's this. It's impossible to care about everything. So when I feel like nothing matters, I seek out something that does. I have upended my life and chosen to surround myself with people for whom their words match their actions and boundaries are respected and upheld. I cannot stress enough this was far from easy. It has been, and continues to be, a grueling crawl that I will have to do for a long, long time as I heal, as I relapse, and as I grow to face the ever-incoming obstacles of life. In the second rendition of the video, you have a structure where all of the footage from part 1 and part 2 are from before the breakup, and the footage in the epilogue is after the breakup. I thought that this rendition of the video was going to be a video where every part of the video was made after a big life event. Life ended up throwing this exact structure onto this rendition as well. All of the footage you have seen so far was from before I started treatment for my eating disorder. When I am filming this, I have been gaining weight for about 2 months now. Albert Camus, who wrote The Stranger, once said, "One must imagine Sisyphus happy." I want to expand on that. One must imagine Sisyphus relinquishes the relief of having reached the roaring heights of the mountaintop once more. He may know the boulder will roll down again, but in this moment, he is free, even if it's just for a tiny speck of time. Or to pick a random quote from my favorite movie.
So what? You're just gonna ignore everything else? You could be anything, anywhere. Why not go somewhere where your daughter is more than just this? Here, all we get are a few specks of time where any of this actually makes any sense. Then I will cherish these few specks of time.